I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but here I am. I'm 35 and my wife Laura is 33. We've been married for almost 10 years. We have two beautiful kids and what I thought was a pretty solid relationship. Sure, we've had our ups and downs, but who doesn't? Lately, though, things have been weird, and I can't shake the feeling that something's off. I need your advice, so bear with me as I lay out what's been happening. Laura and I met back in college. She was a freshman, and I was a junior. We lived in the same dorm building and quickly became close. We'd drive home together on weekends since our hometowns were only a few towns apart. Those car rides were the start of everything. We'd talk about our dreams, our families, and everything in between. Before long, we were officially a couple, and by the time she graduated, we were inseparable. I proposed 3 years later, and we've been building our life together ever since. For a long time, everything was great. We both got good jobs, bought a house, and had our kids. But a few months ago, Laura started acting differently. She'd be on her phone more than usual, often smiling or giggling at messages. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say it was just friends from work or her book club. I didn't think much of it at first, but then the late-night texts started. One night, I was up late finishing some work when her phone buzzed. It was almost midnight, and I saw her grab it quickly and head into the bathroom. She was in there for nearly 20 minutes. When she came back to bed, I asked if everything was okay, and she brushed it off, saying it was just a friend who needed advice. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. Then there were the book club meetings. Laura joined a book club about a year ago, meeting every other Thursday night. I didn't mind. It was her chance to unwind and have some fun. But recently, she started coming home later and later, often smelling of wine. One night, curiosity got the better of me, and I checked the book club's Facebook page. According to their posts, the meetings always ended by 9 p.m., but Laura wouldn't come home until 11 or even midnight. A couple of weeks ago, I decided to follow her. I know it sounds paranoid, but I had to know what was going on. She left for her book club as usual, and I waited a few minutes before getting in my car and following her. She drove to the usual place, a cozy little cafe in town. I parked a few spaces away and watched as she went inside. Everything seemed normal until she came out an hour later with a man I didn't recognize. They got into his car and drove off. My heart was pounding as I followed them. They drove to a fancy restaurant on the other side of town. I parked a little distance away and watched them go inside. They looked so comfortable together, laughing and talking like old friends. They were there for a couple of hours, and I felt like my world was collapsing around me. After they left the restaurant, they drove to a nearby park. I watched as they walked hand in hand, eventually stopping at a bench. They sat close, and he put his arm around her. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, my hands shaking the whole time. I wanted to confront them, to scream and shout, but I was frozen in place. I didn't want to make a scene, especially not in a public place. When I got home, I was a mess. Laura came in about an hour later, smiling and cheerful. She kissed me on the cheek and asked how my evening was. I felt sick to my stomach, but managed to play along. I needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. The next few days were torture. Every time I looked at Laura, all I could see was her with that man. I started checking her phone when she wasn't around, looking for any clues. It didn't take long to find them. There were dozens of messages between her and a contact saved as Anna. But the messages were anything but friendly. They were flirty, intimate, and sometimes downright explicit. My heart sank as I realized that Anna was the man she was seeing. I decided to dig deeper. I noticed a recurring phone number in the messages, and after a quick online search, I found out it belonged to her ex-boyfriend, Tom. They had dated in high school, and from what Laura had told me, it was a serious relationship. They broke up before college, and she hadn't mentioned him in years. I guess I should have seen it coming. Old flames have a way of reigniting, don't they? I didn't know what to do. Should I confront her? Should I wait and gather more evidence? I felt lost and alone, so I decided to turn to Reddit for advice. I've seen stories here about people going through similar situations, and I'm hoping you all can help me figure out my next steps. The night I found out was a normal Thursday. Laura left for her book club meeting, and I waited a few minutes before getting in my car and following her. She drove to the usual cafe, and I watched as she went inside. Everything seemed normal until she came out an hour later with Tom. My heart sank as I watched them get into his car and drive off. They went to the same fancy restaurant as before, laughing and talking like old friends. After dinner, they drove to a park and sat on a bench, holding hands and talking closely. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking as I took pictures. I wanted to confront them, but I was frozen in place. I didn't want to make a scene in public. I decided to wait and gather more evidence. I needed to be sure before confronting Laura. The next few days were torture. Every time I looked at Laura, all I could see was her with Tom. I started checking her phone when she wasn't around, looking for any clues. It didn't take long to find them. There were dozens of messages between her and a contact saved as Anna. But the messages were anything but friendly. They were flirty, intimate, and sometimes downright explicit. My heart sank as I realized that Anna was Tom. I decided to dig deeper. I noticed a recurring phone number in the messages, and after a quick online search, I found out it belonged to her ex-boyfriend, Tom. They had dated in high school, and from what Laura had told me, it was a serious relationship. They broke up before college, and she hadn't mentioned him in years. I guess I should have seen it coming. Old flames have a way of reigniting, don't they? Hey everyone, it's me again. I want to thank you all for the overwhelming support and advice. It's been a few days since my original post, and I've taken some time to process everything. I've decided to confront Laura tonight. I can't keep living in this limbo, and I need to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship and where things went wrong. Looking back, there were so many signs I missed or ignored. Laura's behavior started changing around the time she reconnected with some old friends on Facebook. She mentioned that Tom had sent her a friend request, and I didn't think much of it at the time. I trusted her completely, and I never imagined she'd betray me like this. Tonight, I'm going to sit her down and tell her everything I know. I'm going to show her the pictures and the messages and ask her to explain. I'm not looking forward to it, but I need to do this for my own sanity. I'll update you all after it happens. Wish me luck. Hey, Reddit, I'm back with an update. First of all, thank you for all the advice and support. It's been a rough few days, but I finally confronted Laura last night. Here's how it all went down. After my last post, I spent a lot of time thinking about our relationship and trying to figure out what went wrong. I kept replaying our memories in my head, looking for clues I might have missed. It was painful, but I needed to understand how we got to this point. Yesterday, I left work early and picked up our kids from school. We spent the afternoon at the park, playing and trying to keep my mind off things. I knew I had to confront Laura that night, and I was dreading it. The kids could sense something was off, but I managed to keep it together for their sake. Laura came home around 7 p.m., smiling and cheerful as always. She kissed me on the cheek and asked how my day was. I felt a lump in my throat, but managed to play along. After we put the kids to bed, I told her we needed to talk. She looked a bit surprised, but agreed and followed me into the living room. I took a deep breath and started by telling her how much I loved her and how important our family was to me. I could see the confusion on her face as she tried to understand where this was going. Then I showed her the pictures and the messages. Her expression changed from confusion to shock, and then to something I couldn't quite read, maybe fear or guilt, I don't know. Laura, I know about you and Tom, I said, my voice trembling. I saw you with him and I've read the messages. I need you to tell me the truth. She stared at the pictures for a moment, her eyes wide with shock. Then she looked up at me, tears forming in her eyes. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant for this to happen. I felt a mix of anger and sadness welling up inside me. Then why did it? Why, Laura? What went wrong between us? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. It started when he sent me a friend request on Facebook. We started chatting, catching up on old times. At first, it was innocent, but then, I don't know. We started talking about our past, about what could have been, and it just spiraled from there. I felt a wave of nausea as she spoke. And you didn't think to tell me? You didn't think I deserved to know? Laura wiped her tears, her face flushed with guilt. I know I should have, but I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you or our family. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So all those nights at the book club? You were with him? She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. Yes, but it wasn't just about the sex. We talked a lot. He made me feel alive, like I mattered. I know that sounds awful, but it's the truth. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. And I didn't make you feel that way? After all these years, all we've built together? Laura shook her head. It's not that, it's just, we got so caught up in our routines, in our responsibilities. I felt like we were drifting apart and I didn't know how to fix it. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. So, what now? Do you love him? She looked down at her hands, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know. I'm so confused. I love you, and I love our family, but I can't deny what I feel for him. The room was silent for a long moment. I felt like my world was falling apart, but I knew I needed to stay strong. We need to figure this out, Laura. For us, for the kids. We can't go on like this. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, but I need you to help me. I can't do it alone. I looked at her, the woman I'd loved for so many years, and felt a mixture of anger, hurt, and hope. Okay, I said finally. We'll try to work through this, but it's going to be hard. We need to be honest with each other, and you need to cut all contact with Tom. Can you do that? She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I can, I promise. The conversation continued late into the night. We talked about everything, our fears, our regrets, our hopes for the future. It was painful, but it also felt like a step towards healing. I'm not saying things will be perfect, but at least we're trying. Hey, Reddit, it's the morning after, and I'm still processing everything that happened last night. I know we have a long road ahead of us, but I'm hopeful that we can rebuild what's been broken. Your support and advice have meant the world to me, and I'll keep you updated as we navigate this difficult journey. If any of you have been through something similar, how did you manage to rebuild trust? How did you keep going when things seemed hopeless? I could really use some advice right now. Thanks for listening. Over the next few days, Laura and I started taking steps to rebuild our relationship. We agreed to go to couples therapy and set some ground rules for our interactions. She deleted all contacts with Tom and blocked him on all social media. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. Therapy was tough. We had to confront a lot of uncomfortable truths about our relationship and ourselves. Laura opened up about how she felt neglected and unappreciated, and I had to face the fact that I'd taken her for granted. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. One evening, a couple of weeks into therapy, Laura and I were sitting on the couch after putting the kids to bed. The house was quiet, and for the first time in a long while, we felt a sense of peace. Do you remember our first date? She asked suddenly, a small smile on her lips. I nodded, returning her smile. Of course. How could I forget? We went to that little Italian place near campus. You wore that blue dress I loved. Laura laughed softly. I can't believe you remember the dress. I remember everything about that night, I said. You looked so beautiful, and I was so nervous. I wanted everything to be perfect. We sat in silence for a moment, both lost in our memories. It felt good to reminisce, to remember the good times we'd shared. It reminded us of why we fell in love in the first place. I'm sorry for everything, Laura said quietly. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know if I can ever make it right, but I'm going to try. I reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. We both made mistakes, Laura, but we're here now, and we're trying. That's what matters. Our journey is far from over, and I know there will be more challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while, I feel hopeful. We're taking it one day at a time, and with each passing day, we're getting a little bit stronger. I'll keep you all updated on our progress. Thanks again for all the support and advice. It's made a world of difference. Hey, Reddit, I wanted to give you a quick update on how things are going. It's been a few months since Laura and I started therapy, and while it hasn't been easy, we're making progress. We've had our ups and downs, but we're learning to communicate better and to appreciate each other more. One thing that's really helped is setting aside time for just the two of us. With the kids and work, it's easy to get caught up in the daily grind and forget about each other. Now we make it a point to have a date night once a week, even if it's just a quiet dinner at home after the kids are in bed. We've also been working on rebuilding trust. Laura's been very transparent about her activities and has gone out of her way to reassure me. It's not something that will happen overnight, but I'm starting to feel more secure in our relationship. I know we still have a long way to go, but I'm optimistic about the future. We're committed to making this work, and that's what matters. Thanks again for all your support and advice. It's been a lifeline during this difficult time. If anyone has any tips or advice on how to keep the momentum going, I'd love to hear them. Thanks for listening. A lot has happened since my last post, and I wanted to share where things stand now. If you're just joining, I'm 35 and my wife Laura is 33. We've been married for almost 10 years, and recently I discovered she was having an affair with her high school ex-boyfriend, Tom. We've been trying to work through it, but it hasn't been easy. Here's the latest. It's been a few more months since we started therapy, and I won't lie. There have been moments when I thought we wouldn't make it. Rebuilding trust is an incredibly slow process, and there are days when the weight of Laura's betrayal feels unbearable. But I keep reminding myself why I'm doing this. For our kids, for the love we once had, and for the possibility of a better future together. Our therapist has been a godsend. She's helped us navigate the murky waters of infidelity and has given us tools to communicate more effectively. One exercise that's been particularly helpful is writing letters to each other. These letters allow us to express our feelings without the pressure of a face-to-face conversation. Reading Laura's letters has been eye-opening. She's expressed a lot of guilt and remorse, and I can see that she's genuinely trying to make amends. One night after the kids were asleep, Laura handed me a letter. "I wrote this today," she said, her voice trembling. "I hope it helps you understand where I'm coming from." I took the letter and sat down on the couch. Laura sat beside me, her eyes filled with anxiety. I opened the letter and began to read. "Dear my name, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for everything I've put you through. I know I've hurt you deeply and I don't know if I'll ever be able to make it right, but I'm committed to trying." When Tom re-entered my life, it was like a flood of old emotions came rushing back. It's not an excuse for my actions, but I was feeling lost and disconnected. He made me feel alive again in a way I hadn't felt in years. I see now that it was a fantasy, a way to escape the responsibilities and routine of our daily life. I want you to know that I love you and our family more than anything. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust and rebuild our relationship. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I hope you'll give me the chance to prove myself. Love. Laura. As I finished reading, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a glimmer of hope. I looked at Laura, who was watching me nervously. "Thank you for writing this," I said finally. "It means a lot to hear your side, to know that you're willing to fight for us." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I am. I truly am. I know I've messed up, but I'm committed to making things right." We talked for hours that night, more openly and honestly than we had in years. It felt like a breakthrough, a small but significant step towards healing. One of the toughest parts of this journey has been dealing with my own insecurities. Discovering the affair made me question everything: my worth, my attractiveness, my ability to keep my wife happy. It's been a struggle to rebuild my self-esteem, but I'm working on it. Therapy has helped, as has talking to friends and family. Opening up about my feelings, even when it's uncomfortable, has been crucial. There was one particularly difficult day when I found an old photo album. It was filled with pictures of Laura and me from our early days together. Our college graduation, our wedding, the birth of our first child. Looking through those memories was bittersweet. I couldn't help but wonder where we went wrong, how we lost the connection we once had. I shared these feelings with Laura, and to my surprise, she suggested we recreate some of those moments. "Let's try to find that spark again," she said. "Let's go back to the places that meant something to us." So we did. We visited our old college campus, walked the same paths we used to, and reminisced about the early days of our relationship. We had dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date, and Laura wore a dress similar to the one she wore that night. It was a small gesture, but it reminded us both of why we fell in love in the first place. Rebuilding intimacy has been another challenge. Physical closeness felt impossible for a long time. I couldn't bear the thought of being intimate with Laura, knowing she had been with someone else. But through therapy and a lot of patience, we've been slowly rebuilding that aspect of our relationship as well. We started with small gestures, holding hands, hugging, kissing. It was awkward at first, but gradually it began to feel more natural. One night, as we were lying in bed, Laura turned to me and said, "I miss you. I miss us." I looked into her eyes and saw the sincerity there. "I miss us too," I admitted, "but it's going to take time." She nodded. "I know, and I'm willing to wait as long as it takes." We've also been focusing on rebuilding our trust through transparency. Laura has given me access to her phone and social media accounts, and she's been very open about her whereabouts and activities. It might seem extreme to some, but it's what we need right now to rebuild trust. I'm not saying it's a permanent solution, but for now it's helping. One day, while cleaning the house, I found a box of letters and mementos from our early days together. Laura walked in as I was looking through them. "What's that?" she asked, sitting down beside me. "Just some old letters and stuff," I replied, handing her a letter she had written to me during our first year of dating. She smiled as she read it, her eyes misting over. "I remember writing this. I was so head over heels for you." I chuckled. "You still are, right?" Laura looked at me, her expression serious. "Yes, I am. I know I haven't shown it lately, but I love you more than anything." As we continue to work on our relationship, I've realized that healing isn't linear. There are good days and bad days, moments of progress and moments of setback, but we're committed to each other and to our family. That's what keeps us going. Hey, Reddit, thank you again for all your support. It's been a long and painful journey, but I'm hopeful for the future. Laura and I are committed to rebuilding our relationship and creating a better life for ourselves and our kids. If anyone out there is going through something similar, know that you're not alone. Healing is possible, but it takes time, patience, and a lot of hard work. One final note: if you're struggling with trust issues in your relationship, don't be afraid to seek help. Whether it's through therapy, support groups, or simply talking to friends and family, reaching out can make a world of difference. And remember, it's okay to have bad days. What matters is that you keep trying, keep moving forward, and keep believing that things can get better. I'll continue to keep you all updated as we navigate this journey. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being there for me. Your support means more than words can express. It's been almost a year since I found out about the affair. The road to recovery has been anything but smooth. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when the pain felt too overwhelming. But Laura and I made a commitment to each other and to our family, and we've been fighting to keep that promise. One of the biggest breakthroughs came when Laura decided to write a letter to Tom. She wanted to officially end things with him and to express her regret for how everything unfolded. She showed me the letter before she sent it. "Dear Tom, I need to put an end to this once and for all. What we did was wrong, and it has caused more pain than I ever imagined. I regret everything. The lies, the deceit, the hurt we've caused. My husband and my family mean everything to me, and I'm committed to rebuilding my life with them. This is goodbye, Tom. Please respect my decision and do not contact me again. Laura." Reading that letter was like a weight lifting off my shoulders. It was a tangible step towards closure, not just for Laura, but for both of us. She sent the letter, and we haven't heard from Tom since. As we continued therapy, our therapist suggested we take a trip together, just the two of us. The idea was to reconnect away from the daily stresses of life and to remember why we fell in love in the first place. At first, I was hesitant. The thought of leaving the kids and taking time off work seemed daunting, but eventually, we decided to go for it. We chose a small, secluded cabin in the mountains, a place where we could disconnect from the world and focus on each other. The first few days were awkward. We were both still carrying so much hurt and resentment. But as the days passed, we started to relax and open up more. One night, as we sat by the fire, Laura turned to me and said, "Do you remember the night we met?" I smiled, nodding. "How could I forget? You were the shy girl in the corner, and I couldn't take my eyes off you." She laughed softly. "I was so nervous, I never thought you'd notice me." "I couldn't help but notice you," I replied. "You had this light about you, this energy, it drew me in." We spent the rest of the night reminiscing about our early days, our first date, our first kiss, the moment we knew we were in love. It felt good to remember the good times, to reconnect with the reasons we fell in love in the first place. As the trip went on, we started to rebuild our physical intimacy as well. It wasn't easy at first, but we took it slow, focusing on the small gestures, holding hands, hugging, kissing. Gradually, it began to feel more natural, and we started to find our rhythm again. When we returned home, things felt different. There was a new sense of hope and commitment. We continued therapy and made it a point to have regular date nights. We also started a new tradition, writing letters to each other every month. These letters allowed us to express our feelings and to check in on how we were doing. One night after the kids were asleep, Laura handed me a letter. "I wrote this today," she said, her voice trembling. "I hope it helps you understand where I'm coming from." I took the letter and sat down on the couch. Laura sat beside me, her eyes filled with anxiety. I opened the letter and began to read. "Dear my name, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for everything I've put you through. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to make it right. But I'm committed to trying." When Tom re-entered my life, it was like a flood of old emotions came rushing back. It's not an excuse for my actions, but I was feeling lost and disconnected. He made me feel alive again in a way I hadn't felt in years. I see now that it was a fantasy, a way to escape the responsibilities and routine of our daily life. I want you to know that I love you and our family more than anything. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust and rebuild our relationship. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I hope you'll give me the chance to prove myself. Love, Laura. As I finished reading, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a glimmer of hope. I looked at Laura, who was watching me nervously. "Thank you for writing this," I said finally. "It means a lot to hear your side, to know that you're willing to fight for us." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I am. I truly am. I know I've messed up, but I'm committed to making things right." One of the toughest parts of this journey has been dealing with my own insecurities. Discovering the affair made me question everything: my worth, my attractiveness, my ability to keep my wife happy. It's been a struggle to rebuild my self-esteem, but I'm working on it. Therapy has helped, as has talking to friends and family. Opening up about my feelings, even when it's uncomfortable, has been crucial. There was one particularly difficult day when I found an old photo album. It was filled with pictures of Laura and me from our early days together, our college graduation, our wedding, the birth of our first child. Looking through those memories was bittersweet. I couldn't help but wonder where we went wrong, how we lost the connection we once had. I shared these feelings with Laura, and to my surprise, she suggested we recreate some of those moments. "Let's try to find that spark again," she said. "Let's go back to the places that meant something to us." So, we did. We visited our old college campus, walked the same paths we used to, and reminisced about the early days of our relationship. We had dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date, and Laura wore a dress similar to the one she wore that night. It was a small gesture, but it reminded us both of why we fell in love in the first place. We're still not perfect, and there are days when the pain resurfaces. But each day we're making progress. We've learned to communicate better, to appreciate each other, and to be more present in our relationship. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. Our kids have noticed the change too. They see us laughing more, spending more time together. It's had a positive impact on them, and that makes all the effort worthwhile. Hey Reddit, this will be my last update. Laura and I are in a much better place now. We've worked hard to rebuild our relationship, and while it's still a work in progress, we're committed to each other and our family. If you're going through something similar, know that there is hope. It takes time, patience, and a lot of hard work, but healing is possible. Thank you for all your support and advice. You've been there for me when I needed it most, and I can't express how much that means to me. Remember, it's okay to have bad days, to feel hurt and angry. What matters is that you keep moving forward, keep trying, and keep believing that things can get better. If any of you have tips on how to keep the momentum going or how to handle the tough days, I'd love to hear them. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being there for me. Your support has made all the difference. Take care, everyone.